So recently, a gentleman from a district in Bloomington, Illinois, named Ty Smith, went to his school board to speak.
So when you talk about critical race theory, which is pretty much going to be teaching kids how to hate each other, how to dislike each other, it's pretty much what it's going to all come down to. You're going to deliberately teach kids, this white kid right here got it better than you because he white? You're going to personally tell a white kid, oh, the black people are all down to suppress. How do I have 2 medical degrees if I'm sitting here oppressed? How do I get...
Now, it's worth noting that Ty Smith's observation that critical race theory is going to make children hate one another is something that has been shared by many teachers and parents all across the country.
You're teaching children to hate others because of their skin color, and you're forcing them to lie about other kids' gender.
What about on the students in terms of looking at other races in groups? You know, if I'm sitting in a class and I think this is an Asian person, this is a black person, this is a white person, this is a Middle Eastern, you know, what do you think the impact would be on these kids growing up?
It stokes racial divisions. It's essentially racial stereotyping and racial discrimination. It encourages our students, our very impressionable youth, to look at themselves and their peers through the prism of race. So everything they see, the lenses that they apply to their analysis and their social relationship building is racialized. And that's dangerous.
Are our kids, are they half oppressor, half victim? How does that work?
And when they come home, who do they see? Do they see their mom and their dad? Or do they see an oppressor and the oppressed?
Developmentally, we know they can be activists, but we must build their capacity for seeing injustice first.
And do they see me as the person who is losing out on all of this because I'm black and the system has been stacked against me?
All schools are rooted in white supremacy. Racism is really systematized. So it's in the air we breathe, it's in the water we drink, it is truly all around us.
Because of our skin color, now we're different people than the people that are raising them, the people who love them, the people who are supporting them.
Cancel culture, critical race theory, critical justice theory, all this identity politics stuff. While I dismissed it as a fad, and I thought it was something that was just in universities, and as soon as these students graduated and got in touch with the real world, that they would shed them because the real world would teach them. I didn't expect this thing to expand out of these colleges and into the wider society, into corporations, the government, everywhere else. We're seeing the entire education system where children as young as 6 or 7 or 8 years old are being told if they're white that they're oppressors, which in my book is just pure child abuse, because why on earth would you be telling a 6-year, 7, 8, 9-year-old that they're oppressors and they're responsible for all this heavy history? And then the children of color are being told that they're victims. And again, in its own way, that's also a form of abuse, because these children are being told they have no agency. Everything that happens to them that is negative is as a consequence of something that white people do. And this is now becoming the standard curriculum. And so I'm seeing around a lot of parents who are saying that they're either going to leave the country or homeschool or start their own schools.
Perhaps to demonstrate this more clearly, I'll give an example of an exercise which comes directly out of the critical race theory philosophy called a privilege race.
We are going to be running a race. However, your starting position in this race will be decided by the answers to questions that we are going to be asking you.
Sorry, what? It's a joke.
This activity is intended to explore how society favours one race over others. The divide widens, and the inequality of their position becomes clear.
This is just like not fair now. Farah, none of us are white. None of us are white. It's unfair.
How do you feel standing there in the field of runners?
I kind of feel a bit alone. I can't really see it. I'm literally just by myself, more or less. I'm just a bit a bit frustrated and annoyed.
It's kind of frustrating that like me and Sarah are just standing at the back here while the majority of people who may be white are like standing right at the front. That just frustrates me a bit because it's almost as in what society is today. I don't want this to be how it is, but it is, so it just gets a bit frustrating.
2 medical degrees, no mom, no dad in the house, worked my way through college, sat there and hustled my butt off to get through college. You gonna tell me somebody that looked like all y'all white folks kept me from doing that? Are you serious? Not one white person ever came to me and say, well, son, you're never going to be able to get to work because you know the black people. But guess what? What's sickening about this whole thing is what y'all doing right now is already something I do in my community right now to speak out against stuff because black folks are getting told by other black folks, oh, you know you ain't going to be able to do nothing out there in the world because them white folks ain't going to let you get no, oh, you know you're not going to be able to do it here because you know, the white man going to keep you down. Well, how did I get where I am right now if some white man kept me down? How am I now directing over folks that look just like you guys in this room right now? How? What kept me down? What oppressed me? I worked for myself from off the streets to where I am right now. You gonna sit here and tell me this lie of critical race theory? This the reason why black folks can't get ahead because of white folks? Are you kidding me? This is what we come to now. I can't believe we even talking about this right now. The last thing I'm gonna say right here is something that's crazy. Martin Luther King said he wanted his kids to grow up in a world where they are judged by the contents of their what? Character. Not their skin. If they let this stuff go on right now, it is absolutely doing the complete reverse of what he's doing. So when February comes, don't talk about Martin Luther King. When February comes, don't talk about Black History Month. Y'all gonna sit there and just pretty much pee on his grave with this nonsense? That's exactly what's about to happen.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Now, it's worth noting that Ty Smith's criticism of critical race theory as being against Martin Luther King's dream of a colorblind America and a colorblind world is not a misrepresentation of CRT. Critical race theory is profoundly against the principles of colorblindness as it applies to both social interactions amongst people and under the law.
One value is colorblindness, which is the attempt to take race out of your decision-making process. So for example, if you believe in colorblindness and you want to, say, design a colorblind law, it means that the law should be applied equally to everyone regardless of their race. Or maybe if you want to be colorblind in your day-to-day life, it means that you don't give anyone preferential treatment or discriminatory treatment based on race. And critical race theorists basically say that colorblindness might be a nice idea, but they think that in reality, we're too racially biased for it to work. So if we're pretending that we're colorblind, but we're actually racially biased, then colorblindness is sort of like a facade that keeps us from meaningfully dealing with the racism in society. So that's one value that they're against.
To give another example, I will cite from Critical Race Theory an introduction in a section titled A Critique of Liberalism. Critical race scholars are discontented with liberalism as a framework for addressing America's racial problems. Many liberals believe in colorblindness and neutral principles of constitutional law. They believe in equality, especially equal treatment for all persons, regardless of their different histories. Critical race theorists hold that colorblindness will allow us to address only extremely egregious racial harms, ones that everyone would notice and condemn. But if racism is embedded in our thought processes and social structures, as deeply as many crits believe, then the ordinary business of society, the routine practices and institutions that we rely on to do the world's work will keep minorities in subordinate positions. Only aggressive, color-conscious efforts to change the way things are will do much to ameliorate misery. This is the fundamental difference between the visions of Martin Luther King Jr. and the vision of critical race theorists. MLK wanted us to structure society in such a way that color became the least important characteristic about us, while critical race theorists, utilizing a technique called race consciousness, want to make it the most important and relevant facet of our lives.
First questions would just be, what is the backstory to this? Like, what made you decide to go to the school board meeting? What is the story?
I was simply asked to go, and what I was told is that, Ty, there's no one that's in the black community that ever shows up in these school board meetings, and some of the big topics that they talk about is what's going on in the black neighborhoods, and they're trying to introduce this type of what they call curricula into the school systems that may possibly be teaching kids basically to be racist against each other. And I'm like, what is this? There's like, it's called critical race theory. So different friends of mine handed me different versions, almost like a Bible. Like you got the New International Version, the King James Version of critical race theory. And I'm reading through all these things, but once I read through them, the basis of it was they are teaching racism. They are teaching kids to be racist against each other. And so when I went to this school board meeting, I got to sitting down. I just wanted to hear everybody's take on it because I read it. I got my take from it. I heard people get up and talk about what their take was on it. You got some that actually opposed it, but majority were like, they're for it. Like, this is what we need. This needs to be taught because it's our fault what's happened to the black people. Look what we've done. Our forefathers, we've inherited their DNA. And because of that, our white privilege, this is what we're doing to the black communities. And as I sat there, no kidding, because I was so in tune with what everybody was talking about, I literally looked around the corner like this over my shoulder. Like, there ain't no black folks in here. Yeah. I was the only one that was in there that was black. And they're actually talking about somebody that looks exactly like me. So I let everybody kind of say their piece, and I just like, okay, I'm gonna wait. And after that, I just had to get up and just explode and let these people know you have completely, in other words, lost your mind. If you're gonna tell me that based off the color of your skin, and everybody that's still in that room was white, as you seen, I turn around and say, you're gonna tell me one of you white people kept me from doing this? Absolutely not. That's nonsense. And once that was over and done, do you think anybody approached me and said, well, hey, this is where you're wrong at?
Right.
None.
Now, Ty Smith does bring up an interesting point here. Prior to the meeting, he said that most of the parents and school administrators present were on board with critical race theory, but after he gave his passionate speech, nobody dared contradict him or explain to him where he got it wrong. Now, why is that? The first reason is that these people are cowards. They're perfectly willing to push a curriculum onto your children that will ultimately make them hate each other, but apparently not willing to stand up to a black man who sees this and takes issue with it. The second reason, however, is far more amusing. Critical race theory focuses on a concept which they call experiential knowledge, or standpoint theory, which is really just a fancy way of saying that they view the personal anecdotes and lived experiences of people of color as ultimately authoritative and representative of how reality actually operates. So when a black person happens to stand up to their ideology and claim that his or her lived experiences do not mesh with their envisioned world of oppression, holding them back and preventing their success at every turn, critical race theorists simply have nothing to say.
There are so many parents, especially black parents, I think, that don't even know that this is being taught and would be similarly outraged if anybody sat them down and said, hey, look at this. Look at this documentation. Are you okay? Is this acceptable to you? And I think because it's called critical race theory, you go, okay, maybe they're learning a little bit of history or whatever the classes are. They're always called something different that the left is really good at. And yet it's so poisonous to the young minds of the black youth to separate people quite literally, to assign attributes to them based on the color of their skin. So how do we get the word out, I guess is what I'm asking you.
Well, one way is simply by actually like how that video went viral. But even before then, I'm actually, when I say in the video, I'm actually in the community talking to kids, definitely dealing with the parents. Because number one, I always start with the parents first. And of course, we know that 70+ % of all blacks don't have a father in the home. So I know it's a 90% chance that the kids that I'm dealing with and the mothers that I'm dealing with, daddy is not there. So when I talk to these parents, they're usually a lot of young mothers. They don't even have an idea what it is. So when this video came out, they were all like, so wait a minute, what is it that they're talking about? They're going to be teaching my son? And I'm like, okay, well, I tell you what, instead of me just telling you, I want you to read it. And then in a day or two, you come back and tell me, what did you get from that? No, they are not going to be teaching my son this. And see, even they were able to pick it up. But they had no idea that the school system is trying to implement it into this education. And so this is what got me. After that video came out, all of a sudden, different people that I don't even know of came, well, we're not teaching it yet. We were just thinking about teaching. It's like, oh, it's almost like the equivalence of me seeing a kid being lured away by a stranger with candy. And as he being lured away, I go over there and I bust it up. And the stranger goes, well, I wasn't going to kidnap them or anything. I just wanted to see if he wanted to see my truck.
Right, yeah, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. So you went to this meeting and somebody said to you, actually, they're sitting here conversing about black people and yet there's no black people there.
No.
Which signifies, obviously, that they are just operating on a black stereotype, right? This is a stereotype of what a black person is.
Yes.
So you kind of said that you had a similar experience where it's a bizarre thing. It's like you step into a weird world where you realize, you know, is this even about black people anymore, or is this just white people trying to make themselves feel superior to their other white peers?
Right. Like, hey, I know I'm white, and I know it better than the other whites because I see what's going on with the blacks, and the blacks don't know what's going on with the blacks because we don't. They just don't know, and that's why we're telling their story.
Right.
And I'm sitting here like, I am the story. You're gonna tell my story for me.
Yep.
No white person can sit there and tell me my experience. And no white person can sit there and tell me that a black person cannot achieve anything that they do not want to achieve. I know that y'all are trying to push, when I say y'all, I mean like this system, this narrative is trying to be pushed on kids, on children, on black people, that the reason why they cannot achieve anything is because of something that happened completely in the past. What about right now? What can you do right now?